And welcome to the No Name Yet podcast. That is the podcast with no name. And my guest for today is Tony Foggia, a long-time friend and, guy who's pursuing acting. Tony Foggia.
I'm chasing it down.
You're chasing it down.
It's so nice to be here, Rich. I can't believe that I'm on your podcast.
Yes, I've been wanting to bring you on for quite a long time, and I'm glad that we could match up and that we could do this.
Me too.
And if you go back to other podcasts, there's a few of them where I screw up the introduction, and it's usually when Gritty is on. Gritty is a young man that I met through a member of my church. Who is a podcaster himself. And when he's on my podcast, he usually takes it over. And when I do mess up the intro, he's like, leave it in. And
well, you didn't mess up the intro today because we did it twice.
That's right. And, I wish you hadn't have said that. Because Bo, Gritty, and Justin are going to... Yes, I forgot to push record.
This time you pressed record.
That's right. Ay, Deus mio.
We've gotten all those awkward jitters out of the way.
Yes.
So now we can just relax.
Right.
And be ourselves. We were, and as a quick recap, we were talking about how we met.
Yes.
And immediately started partying our faces off.
Right.
For months and months on end. All the while bringing the wonders of Shakespeare to the little hamlet of Cortland, New York.
Yes. Yeah, and when I do think about that time that Tony and I both went to SUNY Cortland, in the middle, the geographic center of New York State.
Yeah.
Did you remember that? The Tops parking lot was the...
That was the big selling feature.
Yeah.
Come to the geographic center of New York State.
That's right. And the amount of partying that we did is, at this point of my life, and I think back to it, I'm like, how did I even get through?
I don't necessarily remember putting as much time into my studies as I put into other things. But we were kind of fortunate in that there was a lot of crossover, right? A lot of our studies were actually done on the stage or in a rehearsal hall or something like that. So we definitely had it easier than a lot of than the math kids,
Yes.
The science kids, we had it a lot easier than they did.
And there was a lot of crossover with college cultures. I always thought it was really interesting that the theater department was hanging out with the rugby team because of our association with Jack Harris.
Yeah, exactly. Or there would always be like these interlopers, like these people that would just like pop in to do one play, that weren't even part of the theater department, but then all of their friends came.
Right.
Along, to see it or to support it. Yeah, we really there was always something like that going on. There was this, when I first got to Cortland State, we were doing Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And this kid named David Olmsted had been cast in the lead as Pip. But he wasn't a theater major, but he had done another play, I think, for Tom Hischak, and Tom Hischak liked him, and he looked really good for the part. So he got cast as the lead, and I remember I was cast as, I think, his father. And then, very shortly after that, David Olmsted dropped out of the play because his parents didn't want him to do it because they thought his grades would suffer because it was a big commitment.
Mm-hmm.
So I got moved up to the lead. I got moved up to playing Pip in Great Expectations, and I learned at the young age of 20 how to cry on stage by staying up and drinking the whole night before. Because it made me super emotional to the point where Charles Dickens' words made me weep. But it was was a great learning experience because at that age I didn't have what it took to actually be able to cry on stage.
Right.
And I remember that, and so then everybody got moved up one. I got moved up to the lead, and Kenny Tashan, who had been like, I don't know, grave digger or something like that, got moved up to playing the father. So he got the part that I was supposed to play. And he and I were on stage one time, and it was just he and I, and it's sitting at a rickety wooden table with a enormous ceramic sugar bowl. I don't know why, but that's what props decided. So at the end of the scene, Kenny goes to stand up, and his knee bumps the rickety wooden table, and the enormous ceramic cookie jar smashes into 1,000 pieces.
Was this during a show?
It rolled, off the table into 1,000 pieces on the stage, and we only had like one line left, and it was like, goodbye or something. Trying really hard to gather up all of these ceramic shards really quickly during just a goodbye.
Right.
It was very awkward. There was always stuff like that happening at Cortland State, and it was usually involved somebody who wasn't really part of the theater department. Like, I don't know if you remember this girl named Sue Mraz.
Oh, I do. Yes.
Pretty Swedish-looking girl with blonde hair. She and I were in Arms and the Man, George Bernard Shaw. And she and I were on stage, and she was wearing what's called a fall, which is just like a fake.
Oh, I remember this.
And I noticed her, touching the back of her head during it. We had this really long scene. All of those lines were speeches. Every line was like a paragraph. And she's fiddling with the back of her hair, and I noticed the ponytail starting to slide down the back of her head. And I can see this panicked look coming over her face. And before I know it, it fell off, and she ran off the stage. And we had like 2 pages of paragraphs.
Was that the play that with the revolve?
Yeah, the set was on 2 discs that revolved.
Yes.
And so they could show the outside of the house, and then they could spin and show the inside of the house.
Do you remember flipping that thing over? Because they built it upside down on the stage.
I think I remember. I definitely remember mishaps happening with that thing. I remember it being really treacherous to roll, to spin.
Yeah, it was built upside down, and so we slid one of the revolves down to the orchestra pit.
Okay.
And lowered the orchestra pit, and we had these poles to steady it. And at one point, a rope needed to be thrown across the pit when this revolve that is built in pieces is standing on its end.
Oh,
and you're hearing like bolts fall out of it. And so Christine Trosher takes the rope, one of those theater ropes, the thick ones, and throws it to Tom Hischak, and it hits him in the face. And it's just his hair like went up like this. And he was like, "Thanks, Chris."
God.
Then when we were building the set on top of the revolve,
right.
I guess the theater 101 students had built the flats, and they were not the regular flats, but they were like heavier wooden flats, and it required, I guess, glue.
Yeah.
And I guess they didn't use any. So we're putting up this wall, and the wall starts, it's a window unit.
Yep.
And it starts collapsing over Kenny Tashan.
I do remember that.
Yeah, and everybody like froze, but he was standing in the window, which didn't have any panes or anything, and it just went right over his head.
Yeah, I do remember that. I thought that happened during strike, but I do remember that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that set was treacherous. I had to climb through windows on that set. And not kick it over. That's how flimsy it felt. But I really enjoyed it. I do remember. You remember I think they were called the Heck brothers or Hike brothers.
Oh, the Hikes, yes.
These twins that were on the crew, and so and they were big guys. So like one was supposed to spin it to the one to the left, and the other one had to spin the other one to the right. And I remember being on stage, and it's starting to spin and then stopping. And then you would hear creak and it would stop. And then you would hear, Christine, Christine, I can turn it.
I remember that. I do
Footsteps,
remember that.
footsteps come running into you, and then you spin away. Yeah.
You know, my first show was uh, as is on the crew.
Yeah, you were this stage manager, weren't you?
No, I was in the ceiling with a spotlight,
Oh, okay.
and I guess at the time it was pretty groundbreaking that a college would be doing the play as is.
We were the first college to do it. Yeah.
Or we were the first college to do it. And for those who are not familiar with the play as is, it's a play about people with AIDS and what was going on at that time in the 80s.
Yeah, it was written in the early 80s. It's one of the first plays written about AIDS.
Yes. And, you know, that was my first experience, you know, working on a show in college.
Yeah.
And I quickly found out that when mishaps did happen, that it was almost impossible to stop laughing when you're around the crew because you had the headphones and everybody was laughing in your ear.
Yes.
So I don't know if you remember this or not, but I think it's like they're during like the first during the tech rehearsal where Susan uh, had the speech. You know, she starts the play, and that she crossed the stage. The set was built. It was pretty much what it was like compartments, kind of almost like a raised from the actual stage, and there's stairs going down on each side. So she starts in the middle, and she's doing her speech, and she goes down the stairs, crosses in front of the set, and then goes back up, and then crosses, and then sits down on a stool. And she did it several times, and it basically went that she would start her speech, she'd fall down the stairs, stumble down the stairs, and Dr. Palmer would call her all kinds of names.
Yes.
And she crossed, and then she'd stumble up the stairs. Then Dr. Palmer would make her go back and do it again. And then she did it twice. And then when she finally got to the stool, she didn't quite get to the stool.
Right.
And so she's talking, and all it is my spotlight. There's no other lights on the stage.
That's what
So
made
she's
it hard. Yeah.
yeah, she's blinded.
Yeah.
You know, and she has one of the most unforgiving directors that anyone could have out in the in the seats.
Yeah.
Well, she goes to sit on the stool, and in my ears, they're like, "No, no, Susan, stop. She's not. She's gonna sit down. She's gonna sit down. She's not in front of she's not in front of the stool. She's gonna sit down." And she sits down, and bam, goes down on her butt. the, st- the stool, is, the stool is like 2 feet to her left, and of course, like I mean, roaring laughter from the crew, and I'm in the ceiling, so Dr. Palmer's sitting under me, 40 feet under me,
Right.
and I hear him go, "And not anybody who thinks this is funny, all you people in the crew can just go. You're gonna fire you if you don't stop laughing."
I do remember that so well. I was there, but well, Susan's mistake was in thinking that number one, you're right. It's blinding when you're in a spotlight.
Yes.
But her mistake was in thinking that she couldn't look where she was going. Who goes through life not looking at the stairs they're walking up or walking down?
Right.
Who goes through life just not looking if there's a chair there before you sit? She got it in her head that she had to stare at the audience the entire time.
Right. Well, I'm
Which
wondering if Dr. Palmer put that in her head.
He might have, but a normal person would at least acknowledge the staircase that I'm stumbling up or down.
I don't know if you remember this little detail during Hamlet, but when people were going up and down the stairs, Dr. Palmer was like, "Why is everybody looking at their feet when they're coming down the stairs? People don't usually do that." So of course you do.
But we got it in our heads. The way you crossed behind a chair was first you turned your body to the right and you walked halfway to behind the chair, and then you spun your body to the left to cross the other way behind the chair. But that was just how people behaved.
Yeah.
No one looks at their feet going downstairs. I mean, what kind of a world do we live in?
Now, this man that we're talking about, Dr. Palmer, was a great theater director, but he was a maniac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was really, really talented and really opened my eyes about directing because he had a very filmic director's eye.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he always created some level of, you just wanted to film it. It was so beautiful. A lot of his blocking and things like that. Yeah. And he was one of those rare professors that you could learn a lot from, and you could also party with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, which we did.
Right. Which was good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good and bad because he could, the more he got to know about you, the more he could use against you.
Right.
Which he did quite a bit, you know, with me and others. And, you know, not that he ever got really nasty, but, you know, just close enough to be able to hurt you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or shame you into a performance, whatever it was, you know. But yeah, it was a great experience. What a wonderful experience! And I was only there for 2 years. I was only there for the junior and senior year.
Mm-hmm.
And were you 2 years behind me or 1 year behind me?
I think I was 2 years behind you.
Because I graduated in '87.
Yes, I graduated in '89.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. So my favorite show that I was a part of was Hamlet.
Yeah, you were my I was Polonius and you were
Reynaldo.
And do you remember Howard Stern was so obsessed with creating these clear plexiglass tools?
Yeah.
Like clipboards and boxes and pens and things. And then they always fell apart in our hands. Because he would there was plexiglass glued together.
Right.
And eventually the glue got dry, and you know, you'd go to hand me the box and it would be in 3 pieces or something like that.
So the show was supposed to be Hamlet in the future, but with kind of traditional costumes.
Yeah, with a spaceport standing in for Elsinore.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did it really well. What we thought at the time was futuristic was, of course, velvet robes. in the future,
right?
It's obvious we're already headed there. But to make sure that everyone knew that it was the future, he would have these like red and orange and blue lights periodically swoop across the stage to signify, you know, Star Wars level spaceships.
Yes. But that was a good show.
It really was.
It was a pretty powerful show.
We had the most effeminate Hamlet.
We did.
I mean, Doug Smith was masculine looking, you know, with the receding hairline and the beard and all that. But had sort of a Kelsey Grammer kind of delivery kind of to him.
Right. And it worked.
Yeah, it did.
He did a good job with Hamlet.
And we had an African-American Gertrude.
Right. Ivy Phillips
in her greatest work.
Yeah. Probably was her greatest part that she played in college.
Yeah. We had Greg Wolf phoning it in as Claudius.
Yeah.
kidding. I don't mean that. I just mean that he was perfect for that role.
Oh, he was perfect.
Yeah. And Joe Casterline was perfect for
Horatio.
Horatio
And Joe Kaczynski was Laertes.
was Laertes. Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie version of Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead?
No.
Do you know what that play is?
Yes. Yeah.
It's the same story, but seen through the eyes of those two characters. And so the movie is fantastic in that, you know, through a doorway in the background, you'll see a scene from Hamlet, you know, going on. But it's just going on. It's not what the movie's about, you know. It's really cool that way. But yeah, I love doing that. And the way Dr. Palmer made us all audition, he made it. Did you audition for the role of Hamlet?
I don't believe so.
Because I know I did, Joe Kaczynski did, Kenny Tashan did, Doug Smith did, and maybe one other person did. And what the requirement was, you had to do 2 of Hamlet's speeches at the audition. So we all went in with like 3 or 4. We all were like trying to outdo each other. They were hard. It was hard to number one, hard to memorize it, and then to understand it, you know, at that age, to infuse it with any kind of real meaning at that age, because we were teenagers, you know, it was not easy to do. But I guess Doug Smith was the right person for the job, you know.
Right. Well, your Polonius was fantastic.
I'm so grateful that I did not have any other performance to draw from or to cloud my mind. You know, like I definitely did with Cabaret. In Cabaret, I was practically trying to copy Joel Grey as much as I could, because I didn't have anything of my own to bring to it. And Dr. Palmer even told me later on, he said, if I had been directing Cabaret, you would not have been cast as the MC. He said, I would have cast Oscar Pabon. And I thought, you know what? I would have too. I probably would have too. Oscar Pabon had a very natural sexuality to him, you know, a natural fieriness. Did you know Oscar?
Yes.
Yeah, he would have been wonderful. And as it turned out, Oscar Pabon almost killed me during Cabaret because Oscar Pabon was relegated to working the fly system. So he was in charge of the real heavy things that hung above your head. When they should come down and when they shouldn't, you know. So yeah, and he was always drunk. He was always drunk, you know, at showtime, at curtain time. He was always wasted, and he had these really heavy sandbags that he had to, you know, maneuver and all that kind of
right.
stuff.
Well, I have a story to share with you about Oscar Pabon. A friend of mine from high school, Chris Strapini, went to Cortland also. And we met this guy named Joel Junker. And we hung out for about a year. He ended up leaving Cortland. But there was one weekend that just stands out above the rest. We went to the student activity center and we watched A Christmas Story, the movie.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was the first time we saw it. I think it had just come out. And we loved it. It was hilarious. Then we went up to the Dowd Fine Arts Center and saw House of Blue Leaves.
The play, yeah.
Yes, which is a hilarious, off-the-wall play.
I saw it there too.
So Oscar Pabon was in it.
Right.
And we were seated. This took place in the Black Box Theater. And like if you were coming in the doors, we were seated house right on this platform. There was like nobody in front of us. We were raised and we were right next to the action, the space where they're performing. So Oscar Pabon had a couple speeches like right in front of us. And so we talked to him afterwards and we said, you know, gosh, you know, we really enjoyed this play. We enjoyed your performance. He was like, thanks, goodbye. So the next day, we go and see A Christmas Story again and then go see House of Blue Leaves and sat in the same spot. And so Oscar Pabon notices us and winks at us. Well, then there was one more performance. We went again, sat in the same spot.
Stalking him.
And he crossed and saw us there, and he just gave a very, very short giggle and went on with his dialogue. But yeah, that's really the closest that I was with Oscar. I did, run into him in a couple parties and that. But.
Yeah. I think that he didn't like me, and I understand he didn't like me, and I didn't understand at the time why. But someone had so someone said Oscar was drunk operating the fly system, and I must have said, and I'm sure I did say to Tom, the director, I don't feel safe because Oscar is drunk and he's operating. Well, he took me. He found me at the cast party. The minute I walked into the cast party, he made a beeline for me, and he was like, "I want to talk to you." You know, you were the one that said I was drunk operating the fly system, and I'm not a drunk. Blah 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 blah. You know. And I don't know. We kind of made up, but we weren't that close. He was older than I was. I had just gotten there, and it was his last semester, I think, something like that. And of course, as a senior, gosh, you would expect to get the leading role.
Right.
You wouldn't expect this. I mean, I arrived as a junior, okay, because I went 2 years someplace else, so nobody knew me when I arrived, and to get that part, probably rubbed some people the wrong way who had been there a while. I definitely understand that.
Yes. So after college, you went to New York.
Yeah.
And pursued acting.
And like I said, it was so different back then. There was no TV or film, with very little TV. Like Saturday Night Live was it.
In New York City.
In New York City, it was mostly theater. And all there was backstage newspaper. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't cell phones. There was none of that. There was backstage newspaper and a picture, a black and white picture and a resume. And everything was done through the mail, which was really slow. And I didn't have an agent. And I mean, I found work off Broadway, acting, which didn't pay, stage managing, which paid very little, or running lights, which paid very little. But I needed to survive New York City. And at that time, I didn't see my options, or I didn't understand my options. So I opted for a corporate job. And I opted to make theater secondary in my life because I wasn't able to make a go of it. And I needed to pay my rent and, and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, for a long time, I was in corporate America. I was in the music industry for a number of years. And then, mergers happened, and my job was shed in a merger. And so I did end up in Japan, for 10 years teaching here, there, and everywhere in Japan, teaching. And luckily enough, working in television as well. They have a public network over there called NHK. And I did commercials. I worked in commercials, but I also worked on this educational TV show called Ego de Asobu, which means let's play with English. And it's basically like Romper Room for Japanese kids. And I was there to teach them basic English words and phrases, kind of like an AI version of myself.
Okay.
Just kind of going, it's a gorilla, it's a gorilla, it's a gorilla. Everything had to be in threes. It's a black car. It's a black car. It's a black car. It was real. Everything was real basic. But
did that dialogue appear in your dreams?
It probably did at the time.
Yeah, right.
But everybody was really nice about it. In fact, the director at one point gave me the keys to his standard shift black Camaro, which I don't know how to drive standard shift, or I barely knew how to drive standard shift. I don't know how to drive it. And I was supposed to stop on a dime. He put the tape on the ground, stop the car right on this tape. And then you turn out the window and you look where the camera is focused and the lights are shining and you say, it's a black car. Well, I almost stripped his black car because I don't know how to drive standard shift. But luckily, I was able to stop where he wanted me to stop. But then we did another one at the zoo where the gorilla would not cooperate. Because first of all, they keep you pretty far from the gorilla. There's like a moat between you and the gorilla.
Okay.
I'm on a fence. There's a moat, and then there's the gorilla. And the gorilla can only come so far, but we need him in the shot. We need him like right here in the shot for me to say it's a gorilla. So we get the gorilla close, and they get the camera set up, and they get the lights set up, they get the sound set up, and all of that takes a long time that a gorilla does not want to wait for. The gorilla turns and starts walking back towards its habitat. And then one of the crew people comes out with a banana going, banana, 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 to coax the gorilla back and throws the banana across the moat. So the gorilla picks up the banana, eats the banana, and then turns around and walks back to its habitat before the cameras are set up.
How long did that take?
Oh, that took a long time. That was like a whole day thing at the zoo. The koalas were asleep. We had to try and wake them up without startling them. That's hard to do. But yeah, it was fun. That was a fun job. And it kept me sort of in working, in front of the camera and working with different people. And it's funny, they say the same things, only they say it in Japanese. But when you hear the phrase back to one, even in Japanese, you hear it so many times during the day. Suddenly it makes sense to you. You know what they want.
Yes.
Yeah. And then so I did that, and then eventually, at the ripe old age of 48, I found the courage and and the logistics of how to come back to New York and seriously pursue acting. Well, now the landscape is different now. There's tons of TV done here and tons of filming done here.
That's in New York City.
In New York City, there's tons of that now. And now there's the internet, and now a lot of my auditions now are done, self-tape. Put yourself on QuickTime, make a tape and send it to us, kind of thing. But as I said before, what really changed for me was getting an agent, because before I had the agent, I was getting auditions myself for principal roles in non-union television. I mean, speaking parts in those murder reenactment shows where they combine real footage with dramatizations. And sometimes it's scripted, and sometimes it's all improv, and sometimes it's just pantomime. It depends. And it's kind of like, I equate it with junior varsity as opposed to high school varsity sports. There's junior varsity where you kind of learn what you're doing. And that's what that kind of non-union television is. And I did that, for the first 3 or 4 years that I was here. And then I joined SAG because I had already been a member of Actors Equity. So I was able to join SAG, the Screen Actors Guild. And then I got an agent, but that was hard. I sent out at least 20 press packets, envelopes with my picture, my resume, cover letter, and a list of all the casting directors that I've already met. All the casting directors that I've already auditioned for on my own. And that went a long way, because that's half of an agent's job, is getting the casting directors to know who you are. But I approached these agents saying, these are the casting directors who already know who I am. And out of those 20 press packets, one person responded. Only one. And she said, come to my office, bring 2 monologues. And I went to her office and I did 2 monologues. And then she gave me a piece of paper with a copy from a Coca-Cola TV commercial. It said, you have 30 seconds to memorize this, and then I want to see you do it. Well, I did it, and it wasn't memorized. I was kind of sloppy. And she said, that was sloppy, but But she said, I'm not going to make my decision now. She said, I'll call you. And then a week later, she called and said, I will send you out. And then I started getting the kind of auditions that I want. Then I started auditioning for Law and Order, or Elementary, or Blue Bloods, or film, and a lot of commercials. At my age, it's penis this and prostate that. Every commercial is for a pill to put a smile on your face to get through the day, basically. But no, then I started getting serious auditions for TV and film, where for the first time, I'm sitting in the waiting room and suddenly I recognize the people that I'm waiting with. which is different than non-union television.
Mm-hmm.
Although in non-union television, I did see the same people over and over again at auditions and on shoots, um, and some of them, I do see them pop up in, The Perfect Murder, or I Killed My BFF, or Crime to Remember, those kinds of murder reenactment shows,
Mm-hmm.
which are so well done. The crew are completely professional people. It's the actors that are trying to be, trying to make a real go of it. So they're all very serious. And when they do casting for the principal roles in that, I remember the first time I got cast in the lead role in one of those, they called me in for a callback. It might have been the second callback, but the director was in the room and he looked like he wanted to kill me. He looked like he hated me. I remember thinking, why am I here? This guy looks like he doesn't even know me, but he looks like he despises me, or like he's got me all figured out, and I'm not his type of person. Whatever it was, it just looked like he hated me. But I learned later on that he was just really deep in thought, I guess, while he was looking at me, or maybe he was trying to imagine me in the role. The truth is, I got cast because I really look like the guy in real life. And also I can speak without it sounding completely fake. You know what I mean? Like, I can act a little. So, but then, so we did this, and then I felt the pressure of being the lead, because I knew that if I wasn't on point, like if I was forgetful, if I was late, then we went over budget and we went over schedule. And there was a lot of people working all on schedule. And I didn't want to be the one holding everybody up, even though I had the most lines and I had the most scenes and all of that. And then he would come up to me, like, we would shoot a scene, we would shoot an argument scene. And he would say things like, can you give me 40% more until you cross the fireplace? And then after you cross the fireplace, give me about 10% less. And me pretending to be a professional expert, go, okay, I know exactly what you mean. I had no clue what he meant. But, looking back on it now, it was like, you're overacting in this part, and in this part, you're boring. So stop overacting and stop being boring. Can you do that much, please? We're paying you $140 a day. Come on, Just don't overact and don't be boring. Can you do that much, please? But that was a really good experience. But again, that was non-union. So now once I haven't gotten an agent, and she started sending me on real auditions, which I never got. I've been with her for 5 years. 5 years of, the good thing is I'm getting a reputation among casting directors because the same ones keep calling me back. Like I auditioned for 3 episodes of this show called Mindhunter, which was on Netflix, which was like an FBI procedural period piece kind of thing. I had auditioned for 3 different episodes, didn't get a one. But, that's okay. That's how it goes sometimes. It's good that the same casting director keeps calling me back. And even though Mindhunter is not on anymore, they have called me back for other shows. So that's an important step in any actor's career, is you have to get known by the casting directors. First of all, you have to know which casting directors are working right now, because there are casting directors that actually do 3 television shows that are all on TV right now.
Okay.
And then there are a ton of casting directors that haven't worked in 4 years. Who those are the ones that tend to make the rounds to all the pay and play workshops, where actors will drop $40 to have 5 minutes with a casting director and do a scene or do a monologue. But the casting directors who are busy working, a tight TV schedule or a tight movie schedule, those are the ones that are hard to get a hold of, hard to get seen by. So it definitely helps to have an agent submit the actor, because casting directors' offices get mail stacked so high, and they basically divide it into 2 categories: those that are submitted by agents and those that are submitted by actors themselves. And they've only got so many hours in the day, and they can only get through so much of that mail seriously, that the ones that are submitted by actors are, maybe they're looked at eventually, but that role has already been cast, usually. So you may go into the casting director's portfolio of, because casting directors have to audition for their job, just like actors. And a lot of actors don't realize that. But when when producers are putting together a film, they want to know who's the best casting director for this project. Which casting director has a stable of actors that they know and trust and can send us that fit what we're looking for this project. Now, if that's a period piece, they're generally going to want people that would fit period, look good in period costumes, something odd about their face, or they're thin, or just something like that for period work. Or the thing is, it's either period or futuristic. Both period and sci-fi tend to draw from the same pool of actors quite a bit, mostly classically trained actors too, a lot of times. But casting directors, it's good to know them. And then, and I would say for any actor starting out, certainly when, for me, is still getting to know casting directors is job number one, because that's how you're going to get an agent. And you need an agent to get the right kind of auditions.
And you were just cast in a part?
Yes. So 8 years. So yeah, like 8 years ago, I came to back to the United States to pursue acting. I got an agent 5 years ago. I've been auditioning, with my hopes high for 5 years. But now, I've been cast in something I'm not supposed to talk about. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but it is my first SAG principal role. So for me, what that means is it is under the Screen Actors Guild. It means that my contract was negotiated by my agent, which has never happened before. So she negotiated my billing and my rate and my dressing room and all those kinds of things. That's never happened before. So it's my first SAG principal role. I've done SAG work before, but it was always background, which I'm so grateful for. So I've worked with so many wonderful directors. But this is my first SAG principal role. And I have been, pursuing this seriously for 8 years. But like I said, it's been a step-by-step process. The first step was just getting work in TV. Then it was getting in the union. Then it was getting an agent. And then it was getting auditions. And it takes a lot of patience, a lot of perseverance in my case. And I would say that I think relationships count just as much as talent, if not more than talent in certain cases, because there's a lot of talent out there, but not all of it is talent that you want to spend 16 hours a day with. So being easy to work with and talented goes quite far, in teaching and film.
So, as part of surviving in New York City, you became a wedding officiant.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because this is my kind of like New York 2.0 for me. Because like you said before, I came to New York in my early 20s to be an actor, but fell off course, ended up in the corporate world. This is my second chance, and I didn't want to repeat any of the mistakes. And in my opinion, going to work full time for someone else would be a mistake for me, because I would not be able to pursue acting the way I want to. And the way I want to means, when my agent calls, and there have been times when my agent called and said, "Can you get over to West 45th Street in an hour?" Yes, I can now, but that wasn't always the case when I worked corporate America. So one of the things I did when I lived in Japan, I was a teacher in Japan weekdays, but I wanted to work on weekends too. And it's very popular in Japan to hire a Caucasian wedding officiant who can speak enough Japanese to do the wedding ceremony in Japanese. And I did for, the last 4 or 5 years I was in Japan. I spent every weekend going here, there, and everywhere doing weddings on the weekends. But all in Japanese. And so when I came back to the United States, my mother said, "Well, why don't you do weddings there in New York? You're ordained." And I'm ordained. But New York City also requires a separate license. So I got licensed by New York City as well. But with the ordination, I can do weddings anywhere outside of New York City. So all of New York State, all of New Jersey, and I do. And the great thing is, it's when I want to, and it's for how much I want to, or how little I want to. It's all I make the decisions, but it gives me so much time in my schedule that I can devote to auditioning. And at this point, let's be honest, as an out of work actor, my job is auditioning. And And a few times a week, my agent will say to me, email me and say, here's your audition. This is the deadline. Get me the tape. Well, then I go to work. I set up the camera. I set up the lights. I, pick the wardrobe, do the hair, the makeup if it's required, whatever. And then I film it several times. Well, of course, memorize it first, film it several times. Then I film a slate, which is where you just say your name and your height and all that, and full body shot and all that. But then I put it all on iMovie because I'm a professional. iMovie. I put it all on iMovie. And lately, what I've been doing, especially during the pandemic, it's hard to get a reader. A reader is where you have another actor who's just off camera who does the other character's lines. I haven't had that. So I do the other character's lines because I'm such a professional in the looping booth. So I'm using iMovie, and while I'm recording myself, I'm leaving enough space for the other person's lines, which I'm going to dub in later. But I'm reacting as if I'm speaking now. You know what I mean? I'm reacting as if the other person's speaking now, trying to leave enough space. And then in the editing, when I have it on iMovie, I go in with my mic and I drop in the other character's lines really softly. And then I edit it all together, so it looks so professional. And just put the slate on the end or at the beginning. And then I email it to my agent and, or send it to my agent, and she sends it to production. And then I never hear anything. Never hear anything. That's what it's been for 5 years. And, I auditioned for Blue Bloods, Elementary, Law and Order, Mindhunter, all of this stuff. I submit commercial after commercial after commercial. And my agent is always saying, oh, you'll be a natural in commercials. Look at that smile. You'll be a natural in commercials. I have auditioned for hundreds of commercials, and I haven't been that.
So what helps you cope with that kind of rejection?
Well, I don't take it personally because, look, I've also been the stage manager. I've sat on the other side of the table going, but I know that it's not personal. It really isn't personal. And what's interesting, and I never knew this going into it, was the different levels and layers of approval that an actor has to go through to get 2 lines on Law and Order. You're a 2-line orderly, okay? You don't even have a name. You're just orderly. They give you 2 lines, and so the casting assistant, if the casting assistant likes your tape, because they're the ones that put you on tape, is the casting assistant. If they like it, if they think it looks good, they'll give it to their boss, the casting director. If the casting director likes it, they pass it on to whoever is directing that week's episode. So it's not like a guy who directs all season. He directs that week's episode. He or she directs that week's episode. And if he or she likes it, then they pass it on to the studio / producers, Dick Wolf Productions or whoever produces that show. And if they like it, then they pass it up to the executives at NBC. And if you can pass through all of those layers of approval without offending anyone, without looking too much like someone's snarky brother-in-law that they don't like.
Wow.
Or for any little reason, if you can pass all those layers of approval, you'll get those 2 lines on Law and Order. Now, when it comes to film, it's not as many. It's the casting director. If they like you, they give you to the director. If the director likes you, they give you to the producer or producers. And if they like you, you're in. That kind of happened with me with this part. It's going to be on Netflix. I can say that much. It's going to be on Netflix. Anyway, my agent emails me, here's the 2 lines, put yourself on tape, play around with it, do it a couple of different ways. And I did that. And then about a week or 2 later, I got an email saying, you've been pinned for this role. And so, of course, I had to Google what that meant. I've never been pinned officially. So I Googled what it meant, and it meant some of the people that are going to approve you like you, but not everybody. So hold your horses, which they didn't even have to tell me that much, Yeah. Anyway, 2 days later, she calls me, and I didn't recognize the number, so I declined it. I knew it was a New Jersey number, but I declined it. Because if it was her, it would say her name, right? Anyway, it called again. 2 minutes later, I thought, oh, maybe it's a wedding client. I picked up, and it was her. It was my agent. And she said, hi, I'm calling with your booking offer. Now, I had never heard those 2 words together, booking offer. I said, what? could you say that again? She said, yeah, I'm calling with your booking offer. And I was like, oh my God. And she said, this is your first legitimate booking with me, isn't it? And I said, it is. And I said, thank you very much for staying with me for 5 years, because she's been sending me out to audition after audition for 5 years. I sent her the biggest gift basket from Amazon, immediately.
Uh-huh.
And she called me to thank me. But that's another thing I learned. So I've had this agent for 5 years, and for 5 years I bake 24 cookies every December, and I send them to her. I know that it would be easy to do an Amazon thing, or send a bottle of wine or whatever, and I know a lot of people do that, but I was taught or told to do something more personal. I'm not really crafty, I'm not going to make tea cozies my own, whatever, but I will bake cookies and I do it every year. And I want to acknowledge her and thank her for all of her, as long as I've been persevering, she's been persevering too. Not that she doesn't have other clients. She has other clients. She has a lot of clients that are my age, that look like me. We all run into each other all the time at auditions. But yeah, so this one's going to be on Netflix. I got pinned, then I got cast. And here's the other thing. So they send me the script in an email, and it's great because it has your name embossed across it. On every page is your name embossed, which makes you feel really special. I found my scene on page 62. And then I got the revision. A couple days later, I got a revision PDF. And then a couple days after, I got another revision PDF. These are the blue pages. These are the pink pages. And I keep rushing to page 62 to see if because I'm just like, oh God, don't send the yellow pages. I don't want to be taken out of the movie. And I know who my scene is with, and it isn't someone that I particularly know, because I'm of a certain age. This is a young, actor. So I spent the weekend with my friends in New Jersey, and when I said the name of this actor they all went, oh my God. They were like, oh my God, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. And I was like, really? I didn't know that. That's, not my age group, but, but it's one of those parts where I guess it is like, it equates to being what they call a co-star in television. In television, a co-star means 5 lines or less. And it means they didn't hire you to act. They hired you to tell the story, to facilitate a part of the story. They don't want to see any backstory in you. They don't want you to steal the scene. They don't want you to linger. They don't want you to pause. They want you, if you're the doctor in the emergency room, say what's going on. Don't be, the hairy doctor in the emergency room, or the drunk doctor in the emergency room. Just be the doctor in the emergency room. When it comes to being a guest star, which is they wrote this episode about your character, kind of,
okay,
or a member of your family. You are central to this story. They want to see you act. They paid you to act. And if you're a series regular, they cast you because of your basic personality. How you come across on screen is how they want you to come across reliably every week. So yeah, you may be called for some heavy emotion here and there, but by and large, you were cast because of who you are naturally on screen. The guest stars really have to do the heavy lifting. They're really only there for one episode, and they get all the drama. And then the co-stars, 5 and less, are like, you don't act, please. So my part is in a film, not a TV show, and it equates to a co-star because it's less than 5 lines, and it's one of those don't act, please, just move it forward. Move everything forward. It's called a day player. I'm technically called a day player because I'm just there for the day.
Okay.
And my dressing room is the honey wagon.
Really?
Which you would think would be this tent with scantily clad women. Something like that.
Well, at least it's not the honey bucket.
Not the honey bucket. No, it's a honey wagon.
When I lived in Tacoma, the company that brought the portable toilets was named Honey Bucket, and so that's what they portable toilets were referred to as honey buckets.
The honey bucket.
Yeah.
Did they smell as sweet as honey?
No.
They usually do. There are some here in the park because our bathrooms in the park have been under construction for 17 months.
Okay.
So we've been using porta potties, which have been cleaned probably 4 times in 17 months.
Oh, no.
There are bathrooms across the street in the child's playground,
Mhm.
but people stare at you for a long time when you go into the bathroom at a child's playground, as they should.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah. What were we talking about before? I've forgotten. Senior moment.
Uh, you had brought the narrative to the name of your dressing room.
The honey wagon, yeah.
Yes.
So there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of shooting done around New York City. Everywhere you go, you see these long silver trailers lining the streets. And then you'll see like the craft services where they have this white tent with all the food. But the wagons are, well, the nice ones, the ones that kind of with the windows that pop out to the side, those really nice trailers.
Mhm.
Those are for the stars. And that's where they can lay down and they can have a nap and they can cook a little something, you know. They have Wi-Fi, you know, they're really cool. Then there's what's called the honey wagon. And the honey wagon is basically this long silver trailer that has like 4 or 6 doors. And 2 of the doors will say, one will say Desi and one will say Lucy. And I just think Desi and Lucy, or are they filming the remake of the I Love Lucy? No, that's men's room, ladies' room. I've come to learn. Men's room is Desi, ladies' room is Lucy. And then there are these little rooms off to the side, which I guess technically they would qualify as a dressing room. It's basically like a walk-in closet. Um, it's got a mirror. One wall is a mirror, and the other opposite wall is a bench, a metal bench. There's like a rod where you can hang stuff up, and it's called a honey wagon, and it's basically just a place to change your clothes. Because let's be real, you're going to be hanging out by the M&Ms most of the day anyway. That's what everyone does, especially if you're a day player.
You're going to be hanging out by the M&Ms, you said?
Oh yeah, by the craft services table. That's where
Okay.
everybody hangs out all day long. You know, when you're not shooting, you're hanging out by the craft services table.
And is that craft as in craft cheese?
No, it's just, craft services means it's craft with a C. It just means the caterer.
Okay.
So craft services, they're going to set up like it's like Willy Wonka could not design a better like snack stand than this
Okay.
place. It does have some healthy options. There's fruit, you know, there's a bowl of apples and some of those granola bars. But then there's like everything from dinner mints to beef jerky and everything in between. There's croissants, there's, you know, M&Ms, there's, you know, all this candy, all these donuts, all these muffins, and coffee and, you know, soda and all that stuff. But then the same company, the catering company, they'll do dinner or lunch, depends on the shoot. And I've been on shoots which were hundreds of people, and of course the cast and crew get to eat first, and then all of the if and I used to do this when I was a background actor, and then the union background got to eat next, and then the non-union background got the scraps that were left.
That were left.
And a lot of times it was I've been on sets where the craft services dinner included lobster tail.
Oh, wow.
It was the final day of shooting on a film, and we all got lobster tail. Um, I think maybe the non-union got lobster shreds. I don't know,
Yeah.
but then I've been on others. And you would never think this, where the craft services is they put one of those 1979 orange and white jugs of water on the middle of the table with Dixie cups this tall, and they throw a bag of M&Ms on the table and say, "That's craft services."
Oh, no.
So it all depends. You know, sometimes you
Yeah.
get to do really well and sometimes not. But my agent said to me 3 years ago, because I was doing background on Mr. Robot, and I got something like featured background, you know, which doesn't mean anything. I'll tell you what it means in in a second. But I was out telling my agent, I'm like, I'm doing featured background work on Mr. Robot. She said, don't tell me that. She said, and by the way, stop doing background work. You know, you're never going to get principal work if you keep doing background work. And that kind of made sense. So I stopped doing background work, and that was 3 years ago. Not that I ever made a ton of money doing background work, but it was a few $100s a month, and I liked it. But the hours are really bad. But that time I got to do featured background work on Mr. Robot, it was an ego-shattering experience. Ego-shattering experience.
Okay.
Because all over the place are these production assistants, and they've got headphones, and they're running this way and they're running that way, and they're talking into their headphones, and you don't know who they're talking to. And this one comes up. I was in holding, like the bullpen, and she grabs me by the arm, and she starts walking me towards the set, and she's talking to somebody on her phone, and we stop. And then she grabs me another more, and we walk another 10 feet, and we stop. And she goes, "No, I got him. I've got the old guy right now." Okay, come on.
The old guy.
Yeah, she came into the the holding room, and she grabbed me by, "You come, grab me." And halfway to the set, she goes, "I've got the old guy with me right now." Okay. Well, you know, she was 22. Of course, I'm the old guy.
Right.
But that was the last time I did background work. The hard thing about the good thing about background work is you get to know how to behave properly, right? You can't go up to Meryl Streep and go, "So Meryl, what are you doing later?" You know, they always tell you.
Have you been on set with Meryl Streep?
I have been on the post, and they always say you are a colleague. You are not supposed to go all fanboy on Meryl Streep. Thank you very much. You're a colleague. You're supposed to be professional. By the way, don't look them in the eye. I remember I was on set once. I was on set once of Elementary, and I was background, but it was, again, featured because I was one of the few detectives that was allowed in the apartment. And I was supposed to begin this at the beginning of the scene. I am just off camera, like literally, like the camera is here and I'm here, and I'm supposed to enter the scene. But one of the lead actors did not like the fact that I was facing in his general direction at the very top of the scene. And so I was discreetly and politely told, "Turn to the left." Face away from the set until you hear, your cue, And I was like, okay, I get it. I can play along,
Yeah.
We've all got our issues,
Wow.
But like I said, doing background work, I got to work with Spielberg and Scorsese and so many actors and directors that I really admired, and I was just so glad to be there. But the hours were long, early. The hours were often very early, very early, like 5 a.m. call time, somewhere in nowhere, Brooklyn, and to take most of your clothes with you because they got to choose if they want you to wear the blue shirt with the white stripes or the white shirt with the blue stripes.
But my only experience in film was when they filmed The Place Behind the Pines in the Schenectady area.
Right.
And they filmed at First National Bank. And I discovered that making film was like 4 or 5 people working and 100 people standing around doing nothing, bored out of their mind.
It's wonderful. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, the closer you are to Meryl Streep herself, the busier it gets.
Yeah.
Like the center of the universe, and everything spins around her. And the further out you get, you get like the boom operator or like the hair assistant, the outer planets that don't move very fast or very much.
Right. Like I talked to a guy that was in charge of changing lenses on the lighting. And, he pretty much explained he could sit there for hours and not do anything.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's called the best boy.
Okay.
The best boy is the one who keeps all the lenses. I like the ones that carry like a swashbuckler's collection of tape around their belt area. They've got this rope hanging from their belt that you might have a watch fob on, but it's got like different colors of tape, different kinds of tape. I think they're called grips. They can go tape anything anywhere. Keep it down. I remember once I was doing stand-in. So I did stand-in work on Spike Lee's Black Klansman.
Uh-huh.
And I had never done stand-in work before. So my first day there, I found the other stand-ins, and I'm like, you guys, I gotta stay close to you because I don't know the lingo. I don't know. Stand-in work there's a lot of responsibility. You're second, they call them second team. So the first team, the actors go in and they do a rehearsal, right? And then the second team's called in to watch the rehearsal, because you got to watch whatever actor you're standing in for. You got to watch when they stand up, when they sit down, when they do this with the prop, all that kind of stuff. Because later on, they're going to say, oh, okay, second team rehearsal, which is when the actors go have a latte and the stand-ins go there while they set the camera angles and the lights and the background, and everything has to be, it's painstaking. It takes forever. So they're not going to bother the actors. The stand-ins get to do that. So I stood in on Black Klansman for 3 days. And the assistant director, who I didn't know that's the other thing, get to know who people are. I didn't know who this assistant director was, but partly because the assistant director is usually like here, there, and everywhere. This guy, because he had a peg leg, and I'm not kidding, a peg leg. You don't see those very often in 2019.
Right, like a pirate's peg leg.
Like a pirate's peg leg. Most people have a prosthetic something.
Yeah, yeah.
This guy had a peg leg, and he had a like a lectern with a clip light on it on the corner of the set. But like as soon as you entered the sound stage, he was there. I didn't know what he was, like some kind of assistant stage manager or whatever. Anyway, even if they're filming on the far side of the sound stage and you're way over on this side of the sound stage, you cannot move while they're filming. God forbid you stand up and your folding chair squeaks or goes backward. You know what I mean? Something like that. Well, I didn't know it was that strict. I thought I could tiptoe to craft services to get some of those M&Ms. So I did. And I heard peg leg coming behind me. Click, click, click. And I was like, oh shit. He says, you're not supposed to move at all when they call action. Get back to your seat. And I went back to where the other two stand-ins were sitting. I was very sheepish. Ran back to my seat and I said, I just got yelled at by the pirate. And they started laughing. I said, I didn't know he was the assistant director. I didn't know that kind of clout, They were like, oh yeah. When Charlie says be quiet, you gotta be quiet. So, it's a learning process, but stand-in work was great. So I call it a mistake. It was a mistake. I call it a mistake. I made the mistake of wearing a dark blue, navy blue turtleneck and a light blue V-neck sweater. I look like a member of the Enterprise. To the point where the one production assistant who was supposed to get us on and off set kept referring to me as Starfleet. Hey, Starfleet. Starfleet. Oh God, it was a good experience. And the other thing was, so I went by Anthony, back then. And there was an Anthony who was on the crew, who was one of those people that circle very closely to Meryl. So he's very busy. Anthony's very busy. And so we were in this interrogation room, which was really tiny. I mean, there was barely enough room for the camera, the light, and the 9 people that needed to be crammed into that room. So, I mean, literally, like the camera was this close. And so they had to be very technical and very specific with the angle of my face and, which way I was facing. This guy, Anthony, was the guy holding like the white reflecting screen behind me. And they kept going, Anthony, move your face. They kept going, Anthony, move to the left. Anthony, move to, and I kept going like this, and they were like, don't move. And I'm like, I didn't know. I kept getting out of the way and then getting back into the frame. They kept going, Anthony, we can't see you. Anthony, we can see you. Like, it was so confusing. But it was fun. I was so glad to work on that movie, and to work with Spike Lee, who was very relaxed and, he had it down. He has the process down. He sits there very relaxed he's got like this enormous planner, like with all the storyboards and all the scenes, and he knows because they don't they don't shoot in sequence.
Mhm.
They shoot according to people's schedules,
Okay.
you know, and what what's possible, what's getting delivered on what day, and who's available on that day. I remember I learned when I did Blue Bloods, if Tom Selleck wants to play, if the weather's nice and Tom Selleck wants to play golf, they're not shooting Blue Bloods that day.
Okay.
Or they're shooting, or the B team is shooting, the other scenes on that.
Hmm.
Yeah. But hey, he's not in every scene, so he has that luxury.
So, as far as director styles, you described Spike Lee as laid back, and
Yeah,
um, I'm assuming there's a wide variety of styles among directors.
yeah. Um, there are. I mean, some directors, like I did a Woody Allen movie, and Woody Allen barely talks to his actors at all. He
Wow.
he trusts that he and his casting people have the right people in the right slots.
Mm,
And he pretty much, I mean, he writes a script, and of course they have to stick to the script. But there are times, I think, when he gives them free reign to add little, but it probably would be after he feels like he's gotten what he needs on film. That
okay.
happens a lot. Like the director will get what they think they need on film, and then they'll go up to the actors and say, "Okay, this one, just play with it, just have fun with it." And so they have some extra backup footage that they want to. But every director is different. I remember I did The Irishman. I worked on background on The Irishman. Well, so did everyone in New York, even people who aren't even actors. Everyone in New York did background on The Irishman, whether you know it or not. You were in The Irishman.
Okay.
But we did these enormous courtroom scenes, like out in Brooklyn, where they would pack 500 of us into the courtroom, and Martin Scorsese would be in this little, like, man-made wooden shack back in the corner of the courtroom, and you'd hear cut, cut, you'd hear, and then over the crowd of 500 people, you'd see this little gray head going through the crowd, going up to De Niro or Pacino. I think it was Pacino at that time, and whispering in their ear. And then, you see the little gray head walk back to the little hut. Action! Action! Like that. So I know that, but Martin Scorsese, he's worked with Al Pacino many times. He's worked with Robert De Niro many times. They have this kind of shorthand
Mm,
where I'm sure if Martin Scorsese were to say, "Give me 40% more until you cross the fireplace, and then give me 10% less," Robert De Niro would have no problem with that.
right. Yeah.
They've worked together so many times. And Steven Spielberg also seemed to be very involved with his actors and with his crew. The crew is just as important as the actors, and one's not more important than the other. Everybody's got to be on their A game
Mm,
at the same time.
yeah.
That's why it takes a long time to make TV and film. That's why it's basically one page a day, is because everybody has to be in sync, and it's more than just a few people. I mean, it's everybody, including all of the background actors who are dying to get their 15 minutes of fame on the big screen.
Mm,
I've been on sets where they've had to stop and go back because of background. That happens too. It happens because of sound. It happens because, especially in New York City, there's a helicopter going overhead. You got to stop until that sound is gone.
uh-huh.
All kinds of things. It is such a slow, painstaking process. I also belong to Actors Equity, and I do submit myself for equity plays, although there haven't been any during the pandemic. But nowadays, even Broadway shows have changed to the point where they won't get the funding unless they have a bankable movie star or TV star
Oh, wow.
in the show,
Uh-huh.
because funding is for Broadway is scarce. It's a risky investment, especially post pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Terribly risky investment. So the only way to get an investment is to make sure you've got a bankable Hollywood star at the helm, or
Right.
somewhere in the cast, usually at the helm. And then, if you can get a bankable Hollywood director, even better. But for the typical equity actor, who, that's the thing. I've been a member of Equity since 1992. I have never done an equity play, ever. But I believe in it. I believe in the Actors Equity Association. And growing up, it was like my dream was to belong to Actors Equity. That's why I went to Williamstown and got those 10 equity points. Yeah, but now that I'm in it, I can do it. But you know, who's going to hire me? I'm not anybody. You know what I mean? You've got to be somebody. Even to get the small roles now, you've got to be somebody. You know, with a list of credits. So, I mean, I'm getting some credits on my resume. You know,
Mhm.
finally getting the old college credits off my resume. Because as we've already established, that was 35 years ago.
Right. Right.
But it takes a long time. I mean, you know, it's been 8 years, like I said. But it took me also a long time to find the courage. I think that's a large part of it. It takes a while to find the courage to do what you want to do with your life, to the realization that, hey, time is finite. Do what you think you came here to do. I mean, I think I came here to make people, I think one of the things I came here to do is to make people laugh, only because it's kind of been a natural muscle for me that a reflexive thing that I've been able to do
Mhm.
without much effort. So that is a natural gift. And I think that we should all, be able to identify and use our natural gifts.
Right.
That's why I'm so glad that my first big break is in a comedy.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, and I know that through this last 8 years, there's been times where you've questioned, uh, what you were doing, um, and I've always my response has always been that I'm proud of you. That you've been
I,
self-sufficient, and you're really going after what you really want to do, and
I appreciate it.
yeah.
I appreciate that because it's almost like at my age, what else am I gonna do? Really? You know? I mean, it's not like I'm gonna take corporate America by storm at my age. No one's
Mm.
gonna hire me. It's like I may as well pursue my dream now while I can still walk. I mean,
Mm.
that was the thing. I I always accepted, and I do continue to accept the fact that this may all be for nothing. It may all be for nothing, but you know what? The fact that I am in the union, the fact that I have an agent, the fact that I'm auditioning for these parts in television and film, that is my dream life. That
Mhm.
is the dream life that I saw myself living as a child. I'm an actor in New York, legitimately, sometimes working, sometimes not. But like you said, I found a way to be self sufficient. But it's just the pursuit, it's just being in the game, like
Mhm.
legitimately being a member of the union and being in the game. That for me is enough because I am a professional actor. I wanted to be a professional actor. And yeah, it took a long time, but especially in the last 8 years, there was never a time when I thought, oh, I think I'm going to give up. This isn't going to work. There were times when I begged and pleaded for a job, definitely. Like I begged and pleaded to get a SAG principal role for a very long time. Um, but my attitude was always, I'm going to try anything else. I'm certainly not going to put any of the limited energy that I have left into finding a corporate job. Hell
Mm.
no. I'm not going to drive for Grubhub at my age, so I'm just going to find a way to make it work. So I will tell you a very short story, inspirational story. I'm a tennis player, and I watched this interview with Martina Navratilova, who was champion of the 80s. She won everything in the 80s. But at the end of the 80s, she was floundering. She couldn't find her mojo. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to quit. And a sports psychologist was unable to help her. So she talked to Billie Jean King, and Billie Jean said, well, is there anything left that you still want to do? And Martina said, yes, I would like to win Wimbledon one more time. I would like to win Wimbledon next year in 1990. And Billie Jean said, well, start keeping a diary. And every day I want you to write, I won Wimbledon 1990. And so Martina started keeping a diary, and every day she wrote that. I won Wimbledon in 1990, and less than a year later, she had done it. She won Wimbledon in 1990. So I heard that, and I'm into spiritual New Age things. I'm always doing mantras. I'm tapping myself all over, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I started writing every day, and I think I may have started on January 1st, but I don't remember. I started writing every day. At the end of my meditation, I would write, I got my big break in 2021. I got, just once a day, I got my big break in 2021. And for me, this is that big break because it is the first time I've had a SAG principal role, an above the line role. Uh, No, that's not the right phrase. It ain't an above the line role. It's a well below the line role. It isn't, Tony Foggia starring in, Tony and Meryl together again. It isn't that. But it is the first time that I am on a union project in a principal role. So for me, that is the big break. And for me, that's not just that it's spiritual magic or anything like that. I think it was a slight shift in my mindset, which made me hyper sensitive to any opportunities that may present themselves. Like any possible lead to a possible audition, to a possible connection in the industry, because it all adds up eventually. I spend a great deal of time I'm only on Instagram, and I'm really only on Instagram for acting. I use it to connect with I use it to connect with actors, directors, writers, producers, but I've been doing that for years, and I think over time all of that has an effect. Like it was this guy, John Swanbeck. He's a director in LA. And I've read his book, and I've taken his class, and I follow him on social media, and he is so succinct and precise and so informative about what makes a good camera actor as opposed to a stage actor. And there have been a few others too, but he has really helped elevate my on-camera skill to the point where I kind of look, now I come across as a natural screen actor in my screen audition, as opposed to a theatrical actor in a screen audition. I've seen both. I've been in class with both.
Okay.
And I've seen the difference in both. I call it the Botox effect. Because I'm a snarky SOB, but basically screen actors don't move their face at all.
They don't what?
They don't move their face at all. And I'm saying it because they can't, because they're on Botox.
Okay.
But you don't see the people on Law and Order and Blue Bloods and all that. They never move their eyebrows. They very rarely move their face. All of the acting is in their eyes and in their voice. But it's hard for people who are trained on the stage to have the confidence to do that, because Dr. Palmer was always telling us, you've got to play to the people in the last row, right?
Right.
So, you've got to make sure everyone sees those eyebrows, but on TV, that comes across as overly theatrical. It's almost clownish. But then again, styles change. Like back in the 70s, that was the style for even TV acting. It was a lot bigger back then, in the 70s and 80s. I mean, we all saw those women catfight on Dynasty and all that. But nowadays, so back then, okay, here's my theory. Back then, society in general had more decorum about it. So we wanted to see our TV and film stars act out. Nowadays, society has no decorum about it at all. So we long to see people on the screen and on the stage who can hold it together, who contain their emotions. To us, that, at least on the level of entertainment, that is what we gravitate towards now, are people who have emotions, and we can see them in their eyes, and we can hear the emotions in their voice, but they're not so histrionic, because we as a society are histrionic. So we long to see the opposite in our entertainment. It's kind of the way during the Depression, they all wanted to see movies of opulence and glitter and diamonds. We need that escape. And right now, everyone's got their hair on fire. So our escape is those stars on TV and film that may have the emotions, but are able to contain them. That's a fad in acting nowadays, for TV and for screen only, I would say. Anyway, that's my philosophy.
That's right.
And you see where it's gotten me. After the world on a string now, baby. I got the CEO of Netflix on the phone right now.
That's right. Well, Tony, I thank you for sharing so much today.
Rich, anytime you call an actor and ask them to talk about themselves, you're gonna get a long ass podcast.
Right. So Tony, we end the episode the same way each time, with a word of prayer.
Okay, let's do it.
If we could pray. Father God, I appreciate my friend Tony Foggia, and I thank you that this friendship has lasted, and that, Lord, I ask that it continue to last forever. So, Father God, I ask that you continue to walk alongside of Tony, and that, God, that every victory, that, Lord, that he knows uh, that his work is paying off, and that, um, as he expressed, that it's in the striving that he finds fulfillment. And that, Lord, that this goes along with my favorite theology, that theology of John Wesley, that teaches us to strive to be as much like Jesus Christ as we can. It's in the striving that we are successful. And so, Lord, I ask that you continue to provide Tony with the strength he needs, the encouragement he needs, and the joy he needs. And I ask this through your precious Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
May I say a thank you as well?
Yes.
Thank you, God, for all of the abundance that flows into my life through others, like my friend Rich Moran. So much abundance has flowed into my life through others and through Rich in particular. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, now you got to let me know when this is going to be on, because I gotta let my fans know.
Okay.